Pew Research states 18% of Americans have seen a ghost. In this episode, both Jose and I share some personal paranormal experiences. We'll finish the podcast with the Mexican folklore of La Malora. Next on Technically a Conversation. Greetings, super friends. Welcome to another episode of Technically a Conversation. Here, we like to share an interesting topic with each other, which we recently learned, and hope you find it interesting too. Although today, we will do things a little bit differently. I'm one half of your host, Isela, and joining me as always is the lovely co-host, Jose. How are you?
I'm doing great, feeling much better. Welcome back, Isela.
Thank you.
I missed you last week. How have you been?
I have been pretty good. I appreciate it. I think it's hilarious how we're both going through some stuff. And every day we're like, how are you? No, how are you? So I appreciate it. And I'm glad you actually do sound, you sound like 90% there. You're getting there.
I was going to say 87%.
Oh, hey, there you go. Okay. I'm the eternal optimist. What can I say?
And again, I want to thank Dakota from Contra Zoom Pod for filling in last week.
Yes, thank you so much, Dakota. You are so kind. This is where friends step in as well. I really appreciate that.
Definitely.
Brief reminder, we still have that awesome opportunity to win your very own Technically a Conversation t-shirt. Tell them what they got to do, Jose.
It's really easy. Just leave us a review, take a screenshot, and send it to one of our socials. We're at Greetings TAC everywhere. We'll read it on the show, and once we get 25 reviews, we'll do a drawing and give the winner a sexy Technically a Conversation t-shirt. So check out technicallyaconversation.com or the show notes for all the deets. And to those of you that have already left us a review, thank you.
Thank you guys so much. You know what time it is. You know what time it is. Shout out time. Here's the list, y'all. The Royal Queens, Elena and Erica, The Duke, Stephen B, Contra Zoom Podcast, and the ever lovely Claudia S. Thank you, guys. That air horn is still super fun. I'm going to do a special shout out to my girl, Chris, a.k.a. Soul Snatcher. She'll laugh. She was in town not that long ago, and she was kind enough to squeeze me in to have some time to catch up. It was a blast. I miss you already, Chris. So yes, we're continuing on with our spooky time.
Always my favorite time.
Yeah. I thought it'd be fun if we just share what has happened to us or maybe some personal stories that we have heard. Is that a good idea?
Are these the type of stories that I would normally tell my therapist, or what kind of stories are you looking for?
Oh my goodness. You should be telling your therapist your own story. That's funny. These are the stories that I would probably tell my therapist.
I'll follow your lead.
Okay.
Lead by example, Isela.
There you go. Okay. Personal things that I have heard or people have told me that are close to me. Like, for example, my mom had told me a couple of things which I thought were interesting in that paranormal realm that can't be explained. She grew up in Chihuahua, and she said it was really common for her neighbors to say, hey, your house was all lit up inside. There was a party and you guys didn't even invite me. And then they were like, when did you guys get electricity? My mom's house, their house was all lit up. And the weird thing is they never had electricity and they weren't even in the house. So what the heck was going on inside the house? So weird things like that. There's no reason why they would see the whole house lit up. Another time, that same neighbors thought that the house was on fire, but then as they got close, there was nothing. Another time when my mom was a little bit older, she was about 20. My mom grew up with 6 other siblings. It's a total of 7 of them. And my oldest aunt kept hearing a knock at the front door. The weird thing you have to know, though, is there's a screen room that locks before you get to that front door that she heard the knocking on. So you'd have to get through that locked door to get to that other door. So she kept hearing this knock at a specific time every night. And after a while, they kind of wisened up and they said, what if two of you go on the outside of the door to catch who is knocking? So that was what they did. They had it all timed out. My aunt's inside. My mom and my aunt Elia are outside and they're waiting. And my aunt inside says, I can hear the knock. Can you hear it? My mom on the same door and my aunt, they couldn't hear any of the knocking. Isn't that the weirdest thing?
Yeah, that's crazy. Did they ever figure out what it was?
No, but we've often heard this common saying in Spanish, el dinero hace ruido. I don't know if you've ever heard that. So basically what that means in English for the non-Spanish speakers is money makes noise. And when they sold that house, there was some remodeling being done. And where that knocking was coming from, I guess they had made that whole thing into a room. So they knocked all that stuff down and they found a can of old gold coins.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that strange?
That's super crazy.
I thought it was really, really weird. So that's kind of some of the weird stories. But what did happen on that last day, because my mom was so freaked out and my aunt, and they were very religious. They're still very religious. They were armed with holy water, by the way. So when they heard that and nobody was there, my mom was like, we just like kind of sprinkled some holy water on the door. And they're like, oh, we never heard it again. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if it was the holy water. I don't, who knows? But yeah, that was what they found.
Wow. Well, that sucks that your parents didn't find that.
Right? I was like, dude, you guys should have started digging up a long time ago.
I know.
My mom's always been a really vivid dreamer, though. So here's another weird thing. I think that's where I get that from, because I can wake up almost every morning and I know exactly what I dreamt. And of course, it makes no sense, right? But one of the times she was telling me her dream, and I remember it was like a Saturday morning and she's having her coffee and I was in high school and she was telling me how it felt really, really weird because she was surrounded by all these people that she didn't recognize. And there was a lot of, the way she described them was it was a lot of gringos. It was a lot of Caucasians and so and she knew she was at a funeral, but she didn't know whose funeral it was. She said she kept trying to make her way to the front, but there were so many people. She couldn't see who was in the casket. So she was worried, oh my God, I wonder if that means someone's going to die. Because every time she would dream about certain things, it meant other things. Like she always knew when someone was pregnant in the family. It was like one specific thing, someone's pregnant. And not to us, because obviously, I have one kid. My brother has one kid, but in her extended family, she always knew. And later that day, our neighbor across, but to the left, her name's Anna. She had called on our old house phone, if you remember those things. She called on the house phone to tell us that her direct neighbor had died that night. So, and he was also like a gringo. So that was kind of who my mom, I guess, had that weird premonition.
Wow.
Very strange. So my mom's weird. I'm a little weird. But thankfully, I don't have those dreams. I'd just like to clarify that.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to have those type of dreams, but I never remember my dreams. I think the last one that I remember was the one that I told you with Kat McNamara,
yeah,
which I probably shouldn't go into detail on the podcast.
That was that was a good dream though, right? So that's one you should definitely remember.
Yeah, but sadly that was maybe like 6 months ago, and I don't remember any other dreams since then.
So I have another personal story. This is one in my house growing up. My sister remembers it really, really clearly because she's the oldest. But I want to say I was like in 5th grade or so. My mom had spent a whole month in Amman, Jordan, because my dad was working there that year. Therefore, her good friend, which happened to be one of our neighbors, came and was taking care of us because there's 3 of us that she left, right? So me, my sister, my brother. And Lydia is the lady who was taking care of us. She was just kind of talking about like weird stuff that had been going around in the neighborhood. For example, that same lady, Anna, that I had mentioned before, she had some kind of glass shatter. So when she went to the kitchen to find, what shattered, nothing was broken. Not a window, not a glass, but she heard it clear as day. So that's kind of interesting. And then there was a family that their dining room chairs were just being pulled out by themselves. And they would watch them just get pulled out. Weird stuff like that was happening. My neighbor had talked about how it could have possibly been the spirit of a young girl who had died in the neighborhood. She kind of told us about her. And by then it was already getting late. And she's like, go to bed. It's time for bed. And as, she's kind of walking us towards down the hall where all the bedrooms were, she told my sister, oh, I kind of wish that something weird would happen. And then my sister said, oh, don't say that. Something might happen when you're over there and we're over here, right? So they kind of like laughed it off. But just as they were laughing and their guards were down or whatever, they hear this crazy like boom on the front window. And my sister said it was so loud. They all got scared. They ran to the front. And I just remember the banging. Lydia ran outside to see if she could catch who did that. But my neighbor, he was outside watering and he says, hey, what's wrong? Because he saw that Lydia had ran out. And she says, who came to the front? And he says, no one came. I've been out here for like 15 minutes. So nobody was at the front door. That's a little bit weird. But the weird thing is my sister feels like that young spirit is very much like, if you've watched Encanto, it's like Bruno. Like, we don't talk about Bruno, right? I know you haven't seen Bruno, but I'm sorry, you haven't seen Encanto, but if you ever watch it, that joke will be funnier.
I'll keep that in mind if I ever am forced to watch that movie.
Right. I don't think you will. I did it for the listeners, and if anything. Those types of things that happened in that house. In my own house, I can tell you a couple of weird things. When my daughter was really, really young, she was like a baby. I remember going in to brush my teeth, and on the corner, like the very corner of the counter, my toothbrush was like balancing. Like, I could have sworn if you were looking at it, it looked like it could have fallen. Like, why would it be there? Why would I leave that there? Issa couldn't even reach that shit. And, it's just us. So it was very weird. I was like, what the heck is going on with my toothbrush? Another time I remember waking up to a red handprint on the bottom, not on my calf, a little bit further down. And I remember taking a picture and sending it to my sister. And she was like, that is weird. It wasn't a child's hand. It was definitely a big hand. But it was like somebody was like strangling it, like when it's red.
I had a friend who that happened to.
No, really?
Yeah, she sent me the picture also. She's also very, I don't want to say superstitious, but she believes in all the supernatural stuff. So right away she thought it was like ghosts or demons or whatever. And I think I was very helpful, and I said, it could only have been the devil. Had to have been the devil.
That's super comforting, yeah. It's a good thing I didn't know you back then.
I probably would have suggested it was the devil as well.
Honestly, my house feels very calm. It's actually, that never even crossed my mind, to be perfectly honest. I just chalked it up to like, oh, that's weird. I didn't even have a nightmare when I woke up from it or anything. The last thing I will share is in this house, my dad was nice enough to install a motion sensor light in the closet where my office is. And my room is to the right of that if you're looking at that room. And in the middle of the night, just sound asleep, that light will turn on and I will wake up. It doesn't make a noise. I just wake up and that fucking light is on.
I hate it when that shit happens.
Yeah, so it happens to you?
Yeah, I have motion lights all around my house. Not inside, but I have them outside. And yeah, all of a sudden, like, I'll just see the light turn on. There won't be any animals or anything.
That's weird.
Yeah, but I hear that sometimes even like a fly could set it off just because like of the way that they work. I think they work like an infrared or some shit like that. So yeah, there could be a bug that sets it off. But I mean, and you know me, I have like cameras and shit. So sometimes I'll check to see if there was a cat or something that walked by. But no, it just turned on mysteriously.
That is very strange. The last thing I'll share with you is a funny story about how my dad played with a Ouija board.
Oh, those are always fun to play with.
Yeah. This is the last time he played with it too. He said that he wanted to get married and he wanted to know, okay, if this is true, like, what's my future wife's name going to be? And it's spelled my mom's nickname. It's spelled Mela. And 2 weeks later, my dad met her.
Oh, wow.
And they were engaged within like 2 months. And 50 plus years later, here we are. They're still together. And then, of course, my dad said, I should have known your mom was evil.
So that's the reason he quit playing with the Ouija.
I think, yeah, he's like, that's enough of that.
It's like, damn, the last time I played with it, I ended up getting married.
I got hitched in 2 months, yeah. Anyway, no. They're very cute together. That's the end of my stories.
So let's go ahead and take a quick commercial break, and I'll share some of my stories. Mine are nowhere near as cool as yours, but I do have a couple of folk tales that I would like to share with you as well.
Cool.
What's up, y'all? This is Beat Cox from the Vault Classic Music Reviews podcast. We review classic hip-hop, R&B, and dancehall reggae albums 20, 25, and 30 years after their release dates. All true classics should be able to stand the test of time. So we put these classics from the 90s and early 2000s to the test. Each week, we break down the greatest albums in recent urban music history to reflect, review, and reminisce. Catch us every Monday morning for new episodes. Please visit us at vaultclassicpod.com. That's vaultclassicpod.com to check for more info on the show, listen, leave a review, share, and subscribe. You can also visit and interact with us at Vault Classic Pod on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok.
This episode is brought to you by Our Weird World. Every week, I, John Henson, dive into weird, crazy, and forgotten stories from the history books that you have probably never heard before. I try to put some humor into it, or maybe I just come off sounding like a dick. That's really up for you to decide. But join me every Monday. Subscribe everywhere that you get your podcasts.
And we are back. That was weird.
Yeah, did your power go out momentarily or what happened?
No, the computer was fine. It was just my light. And the light's like way out there. I can't even touch the knob. Even if I wanted to, I'd have to get up. I was like, what the heck just happened? I'm glad you saw it though, too. I was like, oh my God, please tell me. At least I have a witness. That's never happened to my, you know this. That's never happened.
Hasn't happened in the year and a half that we've been recording. But I don't know what happens when we're not recording.
No, it's a new light. I don't know why that would happen. Anyway, strange. My light just went out, everybody, just to bring everybody in on what happened.
The only logical explanation is that it has to be the devil.
Only love lives here. What's wrong with you? I'm just kidding. All right, so now you are going to share some cool stories.
Yeah, and my stories, they're not very exciting. Really, the scariest things that have happened to me were probably the things that I recounted during our sleep paralysis episode. I have experienced some weird visual hallucinations that freaked me out at the time. And much like my sleep paralysis stories, I was working and going to school full time and was always sleep deprived and stressed. So I attribute those factors to some of the weird shit that I saw. But both of these situations happened while I was driving. The first one I remember was in West El Paso on Wrestler Road around Dorsey Drive. That's where the road kind of does like a weird kind of curve almost. I don't remember exactly where I was headed. Probably Walmart since it was late at night. Must have been around 11 p.m. I see through the corner of my eyes 3 little girls walking in the median, holding hands. And I remember thinking how strange that their parents would allow them to be walking around so late at night on such a busy street by themselves, especially being so young. I'm not good at telling the age of kids, but I would have guessed that they were maybe between 6 and 8 years old. I remember taking a look at my mirror to see if they were really little kids or if maybe they were older and they were completely gone. I turned around to look and nothing. At that point, I kind of thought that I was going crazy, so I did a U-turn to see if I saw them or if my eyes were playing tricks on me, but they were nowhere to be found. I remember having restless, uneasy feelings the rest of the night when I would reflect on that. I had always meant to do research if there were ever 3 little girls killed in that area, because the lighting is not great, the median is not very wide, and everyone drives like assholes in that area. Not to mention that all the side streets were all residential streets, so there were plenty of families around there. This must have been in 1998, 1999 when I saw that.
That's very interesting. Is it possible that those kids, if they were real, could they have gone into like some bushes? Was there any place they could have gone in to hide?
No, because they were on the medium, and the medium was just all rocks and dirt, so there weren't any trees or anything around there. I just attributed it to being a visual hallucination, probably because I was sleep deprived.
That makes sense, though.
The other weird thing that I saw was also around the same time, but this one was over where the Helen of Troy building is on Desert Boulevard. This is all in El Paso for anybody not in that area that this doesn't sound familiar. I remember it wasn't fully dark, but it was starting to get dark. I saw an old dude with a wheelbarrow really close to the road, and I remember thinking to myself, what is this old guy doing out there so late with a wheelbarrow? I know that they were doing construction in the area, but it seemed real late, and he wasn't wearing that stylish orange vest that construction people usually wear. So I turned my head to get a better look at him, and again, he was gone. It was a very WTF moment.
That's very strange. And he was alone?
Yeah, he was all by himself.
Oh, wow.
Initially I thought he was a construction guy, but there were no other construction people. There were none of those cones. He wasn't wearing a vest. So it just seemed really strange.
That is very interesting. I wonder if you should still do some research to see if, were there any deaths around that area and as well as the other area.
Yeah, maybe. If I remember, I'll hit up the Googs, see what I can find.
Yeah, that's interesting, though.
But yeah, they're not very exciting personal stories. Weird paranormal things, unfortunately, don't happen to me.
Or fortunately, depending on who you ask, I guess.
I like all that stuff, so kind of wish something would happen. Something to give me a story for next year's podcast.
What kind of proof would you want, though? Would you want a whole person to come through a door, or would you just want to hear knocking?
Well, I feel like I hear knocking all the time, but those are my imaginary friends that are knocking.
Okay. Well, yeah, we definitely got to get you a doctor. I'm kidding.
So I have a couple of stories to make up for my lame personal stories.
Okay.
Are you familiar with La Mala Hora, or La Malora, as she is sometimes called?
I've not heard of La Malora.
Okay, so this is another Mexican folktale, and I wanted to share a couple of stories about her. One is from Chiapas, Mexico. The other is from Santa Fe, New Mexico. For those that are unfamiliar, La Mala Hora literally translates to the evil hour. I'll be referring to her as La Malora from now on, but those terms, at least when it comes to this folktale, are interchangeable, and it'll also help me to conserve syllables. According to the website Scary for Kids, La Malora is said to be a wicked spirit or evil demon that wanders the lonely country roads after midnight and terrorizes those who travel alone. She's described as looking like a ghostly black shroud or a large black cotton ball that changes shapes rapidly and is constantly moving. It usually lurks in the darkness at a crossroads, waiting for a lonely traveler. It is more feared by some than the devil. La Malora tries to hypnotize and paralyze anyone who encounters it at night, and then proceeds to envelop and suffocate her prey.
Jeez.
Or at least that is the New Mexican description of this harbinger of death.
Okay.
According to Nina Zumel from the Multo Ghost website, in Chiapas, Mexico, they have a wildly different take on this deadly vixen. She's described as being a beautiful, long-haired woman dressed in white, walking along the side of the road at night. Men who encounter her are so taken by her beauty that they follow her mindlessly, not paying attention to where she is leading them. And honestly, that's me whenever any pretty girl pays attention to me. It doesn't have to be supernatural. For me, I'll be like, cabron, what the hell am I doing in Fabens? How did I get here?
Right. Just follow the pretty girls.
Yep. Especially if they pay attention to me, which isn't often.
Okay.
Those that look down will notice that La Malora appears to be floating in midair and her toes are backwards. The poor souls that don't look down will follow her to their demise as she'll lead them off the edge of a ravine. Apparently in Chiapas, she's also donned her cute little black outfit like she does in New Mexico. And this is when you really have to be careful because she's far more fierce and aggressive when dressed in black. My kind of girl.
Yeah. The Johnny Cash kind of girl.
Well, I was thinking more metal.
That too. Just kidding.
The Chiapas version of the story seems to suggest that she's usually always in human form. It's just the color of her dress that determines how lethal she'll be. The New Mexico version states that it's very rare to see La Malora in human form. She's usually a ghostly black shroud that looks like a black cotton ball. But when she does take human form, it's considered to be a bad omen. It signifies that you or someone you know is going to die.
Oh, wow.
The following reportedly took place in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and is from the Scary for Kids website. I've condensed it for length and clarity and added details that were on the American Folklore.net website, which also retells the story. Isabella called her friend Jane to tell her that she and her husband Enrique were getting divorced. Jane decided to go stay with her friend in Santa Fe since her husband was in Chicago, away on business. It was just after midnight when Jane left her house and drove down the lonely, deserted highway. She approached the small crossroads when suddenly a dark shape appeared in front of her car. The woman screamed with fright and slammed on the brakes, screeching to a halt. When she looked up, the dark shape had disappeared. The woman breathed a sigh of relief. Then she turned to her right and saw something that almost gave her a heart attack. Right beside her, looking right at her, was a hideous old lady. She had the twisted face of a demon, glowing red eyes, and short, pointed teeth. The demonic being began clawing at the window, trying to break the glass. Terrified, Jane slammed on the accelerator and took off down the road. For a few moments, the demonic being ran alongside the car, clawing at the window. As she sped up, she looked in her rearview mirror and saw the demon growing taller and taller until it was as large as a tree. When Jane reached Isabella's house, she ran inside and locked the door behind her. Jane explained what she had seen at the crossroads, and Isabella gasped in horror. It must have been La Malora, she said, the evil one. They say she only appears at a crossroads when someone is about to die. Jane was overcome by a feeling of dread and impending doom. She couldn't sleep a wink that night. She drove back home in the morning, making sure not to drive by the crossroads again, for fear that the demonic being would appear once more. When she arrived home, she found the police car waiting in her driveway. The officers approached her, asked her name, and explained the reason why they were there. Her husband had been mugged on the way back to his hotel the night before. He had been shot in the head and was killed instantly. It all happened just after midnight.
That is really creepy, especially just the way you described her with the sharp teeth and the glowing eyes. Oh, wakala. That sounds like super creepy.
Yeah, she didn't sound as pretty the way that they described her as I had originally envisioned her.
Well, I mean, if you find that hot, then yeah, definitely have some problems. That's a really interesting story. I like that.
Let me share with you the story from Chiapas, Mexico.
Okay.
This one is from the Multo Ghost website and reportedly happened in 1967. A man from Motocintla had a girlfriend in Amatenango. One night, as he was on his way to visit her, he ran into a woman on the road that looked just like his girlfriend. "Since you were coming to see me, I came out to meet you," she said. "I've brought all of my things. Let's run away together." "Are you serious?" the man asked. He couldn't believe his luck, but when he looked at the woman more closely, he saw that her toes were on backwards. "You're not my girlfriend," he said. "Of course I am," she said. "Now let's go before my father finds us." "No, you don't fool me." And the man slipped a blindfold on the woman and began to hit her until she ran away. The next day, the man got a needle and went to a priest to have it blessed. That night, he walked the road to Amatenango again. He ran into La Mala Mujer on the way, again posing as his girlfriend. And this time he pretended that he believed her. They ran away together, and after some time, they arrived to a little glen where they stopped to rest. The man pretended to feel romantic and leaned over to embrace his girlfriend. As they sat down, he slipped the blessed needle beneath her without her noticing. The needle stuck her to the spot. She couldn't get back up, and the man left and went back for the priest. When they returned after dawn, La Malora was still there, with her hair streaming all around her. I don't really know what that means, but that's the way that they described her hair.
It sounds like, do you remember on Ghostbusters when that lady had her hair kind of floating everywhere?
Yeah.
That's what I'm picturing anyway.
Yeah, that makes sense. So they returned. La Malora was still there, her hair streaming all around her. The priest told the man to hit her with a branch while the priest prayed. Just as the priest began his prayer and the man raised his branch, the woman vanished. That's a really sweet story, huh?
I don't know. Well, we definitely have different definitions of sweet, but that's really interesting. I like how the one in Chiapas, depending on what she's wearing, is, how lethal or how crazy of an experience you're going to have. It's like a mood ring of a fabric, though.
Yeah, almost.
It's very cool. I like it.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting. I had never heard of La Malora before, so I thought it would be an interesting story to share with you and all of our super friends.
Yes, hopefully everybody enjoys it. I liked it for sure, especially because you hear it in Mexico and then you still get some of that in New Mexico.
And being from New Mexico, I felt like I had to represent.
You do? There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in New Mexico. I don't think we've delved enough into New Mexico.
We should change that.
Yeah, absolutely. I nominate you.
I will definitely represent whenever I can.
Great.
We should tease next week's show.
Yes.
You're not going to want to miss it. We have a very special interview that y'all will want to stay tuned for.
Exciting.
On that high note, we hope that you enjoyed the show and you join us again next week. If you're enjoying the show, leave us a review, tell a friend, and subscribe wherever fine podcasts are sold. Follow us on the socials at GreetingsTAC, email us at greetingstac@gmail.com, or leave us a voicemail at 915-317-6669 if you have some nasty stories to share with Isela.
No, that sounds like we're inviting the wrong kind of stories. Just say hello.